Good morning.
Hello. Hi there. Good afternoon here.
Yeah.
Exactly
Yeah.
so.
It seems like most of my conversations are happening cross borders. Last like few of them because I've spoken to Mr. James Swallow and Christopher
Ah,
Sequela over the last couple of weeks, and uh, James is in England as well, and Christopher's in Australia, which
okay. That's a pain in the neck.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The calendar shenanigans are up to
Yeah.
Google at that point where I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Like, what is time really?
Well, don't fall for the trap. This happened to me once when I was talking to Kirsten Bayer about a book we were working on, and we both of us realised that the hour had gone back where I was, but not where she was. You're going to be there's 2 weeks where we're out of sync. So if you talk to
Oh,
anyone in the UK within the next few weeks, don't fall for that one.
that is such a like it really proves that time is a construct, right? Like it's not
Oh
really a
God.
thing.
No, it's just made up. I'm just reading Douglas Adams. Time is an illusion. Lunchtime, doubly so.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yes. So thank you very much for talking to me today. I
no
know
worries.
that time is precious, and honestly, I'm using these conversations to just meet cool people. So I really appreciate the time that you've given me today.
No problem.
What brings me to you though is that I've got website that tracks a bunch of Star Trek books
Mm,
and the ins and outs of the written Star Trek litverse, I guess we're calling it.
yep.
And as you can imagine, your name is on there quite a bit with the several Star Trek books that you have. And you
Uh,
have one that's coming up, of course,
I
which
do.
is Asylum for Strange New Worlds.
Hmm.
And I just spoke with Mr. Robert Petkoff, who said
Oh,
he was talking about how he had just finished the narration for your book, and that
oh, he's doing
he
it. Splendid. Yeah,
yes.
excellent.
Yes. So he's on the road doing the main what's the just like the main ringleader of Moulin Rouge. He's doing a traveling play right now, playing that character. He's got a
Oh,
big old mustache and a little tiny beard coming down.
oh, splendid. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
always great. Yeah, that's really
Yes.
good. Oh,
Yeah.
good. I'm
So
glad it's him. He's not done one of mine for a while, I think.
uh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. But he was talking. He warmed me up for your interview because he was talking about how much he appreciated and enjoyed this story. Uh,
Good.
so what can you tell me about the book?
Well, the idea is that it's Una by Una. So I think when we thought about doing a Strange New Worlds, I said, well, I've got to do one about Una, haven't I? Because
Right.
she's named for me, unbelievably.
Hmm.
That's my name. So so we decided to do something that's in her academy days that covers
Hmm.
some of the ground of meeting Pike. So that's some of the ground that we're going to cover. And then I guess it's not giving too much away to say that it's got a dual narration. So events that happen at the academy have an impact on a thing that is happening on board Enterprise. So
Hmm.
so yeah, so that's all I'll give away. There are alien cats. Um, there are some more alien cats.
Like
There's some
sentient alien cats, or are these more like our cats?
yeah, sentient. Well,
Okay.
our cats are pretty cunning, aren't they? So
Yeah.
there are a couple of types of alien cats. There's some linguistic shenanigans, and there's also a student production of the Mikado. So I was posting about that last night. So that's sort of new data, but that's all I'm going to give away at the moment because it's out in a couple of weeks, isn't it? 2 3 weeks. Yeah,
It is. Yes, I already have it
yeah.
on pre-order. And
Oh,
I've got
splendid.
because my bookstore here because I like to buy local, but there's a struggle
Mm,
with buying local in that they don't get the books right when you would think that they would have all
yeah.
the books, and
Yeah.
The book industry right now is I wouldn't say it's in chaos, but it's there's a bit of a struggle to get printed things where printed things should
Mhm.
be. So I always buy like the physical one because I'm a huge like just book collector,
Mm.
specifically for Star Trek. But I also have the Kindle version coming as well.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
like day and date, I'll be able to read it, and then I'll be able to appreciate having it on my shelf afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's been
but
very tricky. I think it's very difficult with I think if you're buying from a small press, you can just buy from them straight away, can't you? But with any kind of mass market book, I think we're sort of being gently corralled towards the sort of big vendors. And
mhm,
like you say, we don't always want to do that. We want to support the local bookshop. Yeah, very tricky. We had some distribution issues during COVID that are very tricky. That meant one of my Picard books was delayed.
mhm.
This one actually got hit by the writers' strike. We sort of we were actually going to set this book in season three, but couldn't make that work with the book's schedule. So we sort of did go back to the drawing board a little bit on this book. But I think it's worked out. I'm a bit sad we didn't get to do that story, which was a belter. But we finessed it to work for what we knew about Strange New Worlds. There's quite a lot of difficult. I know you were just talking about Robert Petkoff. There's quite a lot of quite tricky pronunciations in it. So I imagine he's furious with me. I always
Yeah,
try not to do that, but then
yeah. He was saying he actually enjoys the challenges because, as
good.
you can imagine, someone that reads a lot of words aloud,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
there's the challenge of the job that is enjoyable
yeah.
for many people.
We
Um,
always do a kind of pronunciation guide
oh,
for
that's
all of
good.
these
Yeah.
books. They always check in. Of course, my difficulty is I'm saying it in an English accent, so I have to kind of yeah, I had. Oh, and actually, they got to with this one. I ended up just recording the words because this is the quickest way around. Because I think with the best will in the world, I'm not sure all my all no, I wouldn't say my spellings, my transliterations of alien words. I'm not sure they were always consistent. So, so this is how I want this one to sound. But that, which I think is how you'll say it in your American accent. So, but that's always good fun to do.
Right. Yeah, no, that would be funny because we talked about how what was it Admiral April, the character,
Mm.
was originally a British character in the original one. So it's just funny to me that like a British author would be giving an American narrator tips on how to narrate a British
A
character.
British voice. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's through the looking glass. Who
It
knows what it
really
actually
is.
comes out sounding like?
It'll be lovely. He's fantastic. So I'm thrilled he's doing it. I've had generally the boy in the past. She's also fantastic. Really, really good.
Hmm.
So I think I don't know whether they cycle them around or they kind of take them in turn, but he did one of my well they've both done books of mine that have had Garrick in them and they've both done incredible. It's such a distinctive voice. And they've both got it perfectly. So I'm excited to hear this.
Yes, me as well. So the story that you said you weren't able to get to, is that something that is on the shelf that could be used later down the road, or are there too many elements in this book for it to be?
No, too much. It was a sort of strand of the story that we went that we're
Mm,
just going to have to take that out and retool it. But everything else sort of stayed the same, which is that's a bit of a shame. When people have seen season three, I'll say this is what we're going to do. But hopefully they'll just enjoy this book as it is.
well, I'm sure there's a high possibility of that.
Thank you.
So you did mention that this is you writing Una, or Una writing Una. Um, how surreal is it to be writing a character that is explicitly named after you?
Oh, it's really good. It's just really good fun, isn't it? I mean, of all the things that you expect to happen in life, you don't
Hmm.
expect to be torpedoed back into the pilot of Star Trek. So it was all really good fun. Yeah, I mean, she's a great character, of course. There's I think these characters who are very she's like an onion, isn't she? There's lots and lots of different layers. We see Una as someone very self-assured, number one, very confident, the person that Pike relies on. And then there's all these layers to her that you discover, some of which are layers for obvious reasons of concealment. But at the heart of this is this sort of relationship with Pike, which is extremely solid, extremely trusting.
Hmm.
He's the person. they are each the person that they can rely on. And what I wanted to explore in this book was the kind of genesis of that. What was it that they saw in each other when they first met that they went, I'm going to be on a ship with you one day. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's the kind of dynamic I wanted to explore. But she's great. So I really love her. I love
Yeah, there
Strange New
was.
Worlds.
Yeah, so,
Mm.
me as well. There wasn't
Mm.
a whole lot to inform on screen, at least to
Mm.
inform the character's motivations and like what she's up to. Uh,
Mm.
so how much are you leaning on the stuff that was written about her prior to Strange New Worlds versus what the actress has done on the show?
Well, I think there's quite a lot there because but when this is set, it's or the sort of first strand of this, she's at the academy. So you think, well, what would that kind of person be like at the academy? And I went to a prestigious university um, where I was quite a low key player, but I was surrounded by all these kind of demigods, yeah,
Hmm.
who were all, if they weren't taking the lead in Gilbert and Sullivan, or they weren't producing a play based on Pride and Prejudice that they'd written themselves. They were kind of, strolling into supervision and coming away with first class degrees and that kind of thing. So I observed a lot of people like this when I was quietly, being a very small player at this place. But so I sort of leaned into that a little bit, but also because you're in her points of view, you see under the surface not not the doubts, but the kind of cost it is for her to conceal a sort of this essential part of herself, that
Hmm.
to be able to lead to do the things that she wants to do and to be excellent at them, she's having to seal away this part of her. And part of what happens in this book is a sort of realization of what that might cost her personally over the coming decades. So we all have these moments, don't we? I think in our late teens, our early 20s, where we're making conscious decisions about the rest of our life. And Una's are fraught in particular ways. So that's some of the narrative we looked at, I try to look at in this. And that's absolutely rich pickings, obviously, for a
Hmm.
novelist. I mean, that's your whole book there, really. So that's the kind of thing I leaned into, I think. What's it like being a grade A, double, triple grade A student? But one, everyone's got their own story, their
Hmm.
own pressures. Yeah.
Yeah, Stranger New Worlds has really taken off at, both on TV and in the books. I think we just surpassed Discovery in the number of books that Strange New Worlds has.
Oh,
If
okay.
not,
Yeah.
if not surpassed, we're like really close to it.
We're getting
Which you,
close, aren't we? Yeah.
yeah, you also had a Discovery book as well, didn't you?
I've done
Uh,
two Discovery books. Yep. I've
right,
done one about Tilly at school, and
right,
I've done one about Michael Burnham in her missing year. So yeah, so I've done two disco books.
right.
Um,
I've read both of those and I appreciated both of them
Good.
for greatly different reasons. The Way to the Stars was the one with Tilly, which,
Mm.
if I remember correctly, that one came out right when what I call Tilly Mania was actually happening, when she
Yeah,
was
yeah.
really like that struck the iron like at a perfect time.
Mm.
But it was a good look into like a um just like a young woman's view of the
Mm.
Federation, which isn't something that we get very often. Mostly it's what's the guys up to? What are they blowing
Mm.
up? What spaceships they're shooting at? And
Yeah.
it was a good exploration of what Tilly was made from. And then
Y-
Wonderlands was uh, I want to say that I was somewhat embarrassed that I didn't catch on to what was actually happening in the story until like well past like what it was actually got to, and I was like, ah, okay.
That's
And
fine. As an author, you don't mind either way. Either
Right.
either you get a reader, yeah, and that means you go, yes, I've got the reader, or else the reader goes, I know what's going on, and you think, well, I've now flattered the reader. So as an
Right.
author, you don't mind.
Yes. Yeah, but I actually have both of those in my pile of books that like eventually this is all going to be a back wall to me and be a backdrop, but
Yeah.
unfortunately life gets in the way.
Oh
But
yeah,
books keep coming in and they keep getting stacked up, and
they
one day
certainly
they're all
do.
gonna fall over, and that's where my tomb is gonna be.
Yeah. Well, there are worse ways to go.
Yeah, exactly. So Star Trek's not the only franchise that you're writing
Mm,
for. You're also doing. I saw that you have written a couple Firefly novels, which I got to be
mhm,
honest, the Firefly books are on my list of like the next franchise I'm going to start reading. I love the TV
mm,
series, love the movie, love everything about the universe that they have there.
mm.
Um, and you've also written for Doctor Who, which I guess is
Mm.
like a requirement for citizenship for British authors. Um, like they've done
It
a ton
is
of
a little
books.
bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've done a handful, but oh my goodness, there's quite a lot. Well, I mean, there's quite a lot of Star Trek as well. But the thing with Doctor Who
Hmm.
is that there's all the audio stuff as well, which I don't think
Hmm.
Star Trek really has done. Obviously, there's comparable amounts of novels and comics and lots of spin-off stuff. But Doctor Who has this great audio range as well, which is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and tons of spin-off series as well. I mean, there are Sarah Jane and Torchwood audios, but well beyond that, there's little minor characters who've been in two or three shows, if that, have got some cases have just been in one show, have got their own spin-off series. So there's a mountain of Doctor Who stuff, and I think a lot of people get to do a big finish at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. So the the one series that I saw in
Mm.
your authorship library, like there's a word for like your body of work, right? Whatever that word is, I need to figure it out one day. Your discography,
Corpus.
the what?
Irv. Irv. Or
But
corpus.
the
I
weird
know.
the weird space series that
Oh, right.
is
Okay. Yeah.
could you tell me a bit about that series?
Yeah, so this is a series that was devised by a friend of mine who sadly died quite recently, a British science fiction writer called Eric Brown. And Eric was an incredible writer, real writer's writer, um, and wrote so many brilliant science fiction short stories and novels. He was incredibly prolific, wrote some fantastic 1950s set detective fiction as well. Um, and Eric came up with this idea for kind of it was sort of like a space opera with almost a Lovecraft feel to it. So it's weird space, yeah. And he did a couple of books, and then his sort of idea was that it would be open to other authors.
Hmm.
Um, and I was still quite early on in my career at the time. And he very generous is the kind of person that Eric was. He suggested me, and this was kind of an in to a publisher, amongst other things. So not only was it a kind of commission, it was an introduction. So I took over. We co-wrote a book, um, which was I sort of said we kind of worked on the plot together, and I wrote it up, and then I wrote another one as well. Yeah, so that was and they're really good fun. They're yeah, they're exactly what they say. They're sort of space opera, but with some kind of weird Lovecraftian intelligences. So and Eric just gave me a free rein. I was checking in on the final book, going, "Was this what you had in mind?" And he said, "Probably not, but your book, it's yours now." So generous. People haven't. I don't know how well known he was in the States. He was a really important figure in British science fiction, but people should try and find some of his books. It's just a wonderful writer. Cathani, I think people would like. That he had a wonderful way of writing about very ordinary people, but making you feel how they were connected to the cosmos.
Hmm.
Really wonderful writer. Yeah, so that was Weird Space. So I did a couple of those. Yeah, but those were sort of that was a shared universe, but obviously not a kind of media franchise one.
Right. So is that uh like what happens to that franchise now that he's passed?
Oh, I don't know actually. I think I did too, and then I'm not sure there were any more actually. So it is a
Mhm.
franchise that could be picked up. But yeah, depending on who they had lined up. Often these things are attached to an editor. I don't know if the editor moved on.
Mm.
But yeah, uh, I don't know.
Okay. Well, it would be interesting to see like what happens to
Mm,
something like that because I've heard
yeah.
of shared universes before. The famous one
Mm,
is the like wild cards stuff
yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
a whole bunch of authors are writing
Mm,
for. And I like the idea of like multiple authors doing their own like shared
mm,
universe because they do so well in the
hmm.
known tie-in universes in Star Wars, Star Trek, uh,
Yeah.
but generally those are like entry points for like people to get to know the author, and the
Yeah.
authors aren't making like their bank on those tie-in
Yeah.
novels, which has worked out well for me because like I try to read all the Trek stuff as it comes out,
Mm,
and authors that I already know and love, fantastic, that's great. But like brand new authors, if I find that I
mm,
really like their style on a truck book, then you go check
yeah.
out their new books. And sometimes it's like one of their first couple books is a Trek book, and some
Mm.
pocket books editor just like struck gold on early. But other times they come in and it's an author that's got like 40 other books that you're like, okay, this is
Mm.
let's try some of these out. Let's see if
This
they
is
fit.
someone I can this is someone I can explore. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
always a good feeling.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which is
Yep.
also a good feeling when you find an author that you read their first book for free or something like that on Amazon, and then
Hmm.
you're like, oh man, that was a good book. Are there any more in this series? And you go and look, and they've got like 20 more books in the series. You're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm in.
um,
Yeah. They've
yes,
got me now.
exactly,
They knew what they
yeah.
were doing.
Yeah, I ran into an author that happened with that it was my first foray into superhero books, where it's
Okay.
like
Yeah.
comic book stories, but in full novel form.
Mm.
And I read the first book and I was like, dang, that was a good book. And there was 11 more in the series, and they were all on
Mm.
Kindle Unlimited. And I was like, can I read 11 books in a month? I don't think
Yes.
I don't think I quite made it, but it was worth it to me to like pay for a few months of Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah, yeah, well done.
Yeah, do you participate in any of the all you can eat kind of services like Kindle Unlimited?
Oh, no, I don't actually. I tend to mostly because often my reading is directed by these days. Often my reading is directed by like a panel I'm preparing for. So I'm just
Hmm.
about to reread Douglas Adams because I'm going to be taking part in a online book club about that. So often these days I'm going back to stuff that maybe I've read before. So what I just read some fantasy books for a podcast that I did with a friend called Fantasy Book Swap. So quite a lot of my reading is sort of that these days. I'm involved in a project we're reading all of Le Guin at the moment as well. But I really do have a stat. I mean, you wouldn't believe my to be read, uh, and I buy pretty indiscriminate. I love just having books,
Hmm.
so I buy quite eclectically, and then I might not get around to reading it for like 5 or 6 years, but it usually gets read eventually.
Right,
Usually gets read, but my Kindle's full of stuff I haven't got around to yet. So I haven't looked into Kindle Unlimited because it would just be full of more stuff. Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my TBR list is also quite large. I'm looking around at my various
Yeah.
stacks of books that like I said, shelves up to the wall or up to the ceiling, and
Yeah.
it's books everywhere, which the intent is to read them, but there's also joy in just having the books,
Yeah.
and especially with series like Trek that they don't do it anymore, but they used to be numbered,
Mm.
right? So you'd
Yeah.
have like, oh,
Yeah.
I've got, books 1 through 10 of the Voyager series. Well,
Mm.
it certainly does something for me, collector wise, when there's
Mm.
a number to it, which
Yep.
I was raised on comic books, so
Oh,
maybe that's
that would do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got to get the next one in the sequence. Yeah.
right.
Always frustrating when they get the numbering wrong or the spines don't line up.
Yeah, very true. So I wanted to talk to you about another book that you did, which was a Strange Novel Worlds, um,
Mm,
which I believe was a collection of essays about Trek, obviously. Do you
mm.
remember what your entry was into that?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's only just been released. Yes, so it's Strange Novel Worlds. It's academic essays specifically on Star Trek novels.
Hmm.
Um, and I've got a piece in there. Dave Mack has got a piece in there. And my essay is about Vonda McIntyre. And it's who's one of my favorite science fiction writers. And what I try and do in that essay is I think what when people read Vonda McIntyre, they either usually read her science fiction, her own stuff, or they've read her Trek because they're Trek fans, and she's one of the best Trek writers. The point of my essay is to say, well, actually, if you look at all of her books together, there's a lot of continuity across them. She has a series called Starfarers, which is very influenced by Star Trek, but at the same time, a lot of Next Generation, I think, has a kind of little bit of Vonda McIntyre's idea of Trek in it. Yes, so the idea is that I looked at Vonda McIntyre's whole body of work, Earth, indeed, and read it as a kind of continuity. I had the good fortune to read her there's an unpublished novel. So I had the estate let me read that as well. So I really was able to kind of give a full account of her books. Her novels, I didn't get into the short fiction, which is slightly different. Yes, so that only came out quite recently. And my God, the editors got this book together during COVID. Absolutely incredible, just amazing. When COVID started, I was just finishing off an edited uh, collection of essays. I was doing the indexing just as COVID hit. So I had a glimpse of what it must have been like putting that together, and they did incredible work. So it's a really good book. Like I say, Dave Mack has got something in there. I think Diane Carey. There's an essay looking at the photo novels. There's one that looks at a book of mine. So it looks at my Janeway book. Um, so it's an academic book, so they tend to be a little bit pricier. But I think people would really get something out of this if they've read a lot of Trek literature. They would probably get something out of this book, and you can get it in paperback. I'm fairly sure it's on Kindle as well. I'd have to make sure. Yes, that's Strange Novel Worlds.
I think I actually picked that up when I was at this year's shore leave.
Oh, well
And
done. Yeah.
the book guy that was there, he was like, this is an academic novel, right? Because this is not going to be a cheap book." And I was like,
Yeah.
I understand." And
Yeah.
but yeah, that was my this was my first year going to shore leave.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Yeah.
and
I've only been once. Yeah, I went a while ago. Yeah, nearly 20 years ago, actually.
yeah, they're at a new location now,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's in
Hmm.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania, instead of Maryland.
Ah, yeah, yeah. It was
And
Maryland. I was living in North Carolina at the time. We thought, oh, that's almost doable, isn't it? So,
right, a little more convenient than flying across a giant ocean.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Which is the reason I've not really been back. It's just hard to justify it, really. So, yeah, it's a lovely convention. There's some good academic work at the moment. There's a wonderful, absolutely amazing book about Deep Space Nine by David Seitz that's well worth reading. And Adam Kotsko has got a book coming out quite soon called Late Star Trek. It's kind of looking at the sort of latter half of the franchise, so
Hmm.
Discovery and onwards, but also looking at things like the novels and later movies. So because there's so much critical focus on the earlier stuff, that to kind of look at the later stuff, I think as a unit. So that's coming in March. But the DS9 one, David Seitz, is an amazing book, really good, just one of the best books on Star Trek I've read easily.
Yeah, I just got a illustrated guide to the original series that Titan
Mm,
Publishing put out, and it's a very well put together book
mm,
that has a lot of the same stuff that like we've heard 1,000 times about the series.
yeah.
The ship going to the Smithsonian, all
Mm,
that stuff that is interesting for new fans, and I'd like to have that kind of stuff happening again. But like you
Yeah,
said, like they have mined that era for behind the scenes and
yeah.
interviews very, very deeply.
There's a beautiful book on the animated series that's a hardback. I'm blanking on the authors now. I feel really bad, but it's a really nice book. It's kind of I think there hasn't been a they've it's visually extremely attractive and the information is really interesting too. And these guys love the animated series and
Hmm.
it's an excellent one. I think. Oh, it's another one I just thought of. No, it's gone out of my mind. It'll come to me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll bring up Titan because you had
Mm,
some works, I want to say short stories in the
mm,
Titans Explorer magazine, which
mm.
I'm sure you've heard. They've got their final issue coming up with issue
Yeah.
14.
Hmm.
Uh, were you going to be having any additional work, or were you talking to them about publishing anything before they announced?
Uh, there were some short stories in the pipeline. I'm not sure what's going to happen to those, to be honest. I should probably check in. I've been so busy this year that I saw the news and went, oh, that's a shame because I've loved writing those short stories. It's
Hmm.
been an absolute. It's just been a blast. I love short. It's a really nice length. It's about 2,000 words, and I was just ticking off all the things I hadn't done. Yeah, like you know, I'll get around to doing an Enterprise one or something. Because
Hmm.
if you're a Star Trek and a Doctor Who writer, you've got like a checklist. So you with Doctor Who, you're ticking off whether you've done all the Doctors. And I guess with Star Trek, you're ticking off. You wouldn't do captains because that would go and you drive yourself insane. But you're probably ticking off the shows. And I was thinking, oh, these short stories would be a brilliant way to do that. And now they've, but I had a lot of fun with those. So I'd have moved more quickly and done like an enterprise story or something, or prodigy story, or an animated series. Yeah. No, so I'm sad about that. And it was a lovely magazine. John Freeman's a phenomenal editor. I've worked with John Freeman for a very long time now. I think he may have commissioned one of my very first pieces. Um, so yeah, it's a shame. You never know what's behind these decisions. And of course, I did a couple of books for Titan as well, the autobiographies.
Hmm.
Of Spock and Janeway were with Titan. So who knows what they're planning? I think, like we were saying at the start, it's a tough time for publishing and
Hmm.
magazines. I think it's a really tough time. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Doctor Who magazine keeps going, but it does. So it's been going since the 70s. It keeps on going. It's just got a big enough readership.
Right, and it's the same thing for the Star Wars
Mm,
franchise as well. Like they've got their
mm.
magazine that's running very well.
Yeah.
From what I understand, of course, I would have thought that the Trek one was doing well too, but I'm somewhat myopic in that like all the people that I talk to are talking about Star Trek. So,
Well, exactly. Yes.
we're all huge fans. How come
Yeah, exactly.
the
We're all
rest of the
doing
world
it. Well,
isn't?
no, exactly that. And you just don't know what else is going on at a publisher, or if it's tough for magazines at the best of times at the moment. So many are closing down. I think it's extremely hard to keep a
Yeah.
magazine going.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that CBS Paramount are going to not have magazines of some sort. Because I
Mm,
think Explorer was coming out quarterly or bi-monthly, but
mm,
it wasn't coming
mhm.
out every month. So, uh, as someone that reads the comic books, like I know to expect
Mm.
a new one every month. And after it's been a couple weeks, I haven't seen one. I'm like, I haven't seen one in a little while. Whereas the
Yeah,
Explorer, I was like, I don't even know when it comes out. So
yeah.
maybe
You
there's
need to
one coming
be.
up. Yeah.
I wonder whether things like Comixology kind of folding into Amazon made life extremely difficult for periodicals, or
Hmm.
I know friends of mine who are doing science fiction magazines. The changes in the way that Amazon was supporting those have really hit their business model. So there's all kinds of stuff going on that I just wouldn't even know about. So, but sadly, it means one less thing to enjoy,
Hmm.
one less place to sell my short stories to.
Well, I know that the fine people over at Modifius, they're not necessarily doing short stories, but I know they're doing creative work for their
Mm.
RPG stuff, and they're geographically right around the corner from you. So,
Yeah, I've never done RPG. I mean, I've never really played. A friend of mine writes RPGs.
mhm.
So I should and taught it. I've been an external examiner for a course where students have written RPGs. So what I'd absolutely love is if there was an audio range. I'd absolutely do that. I've got loads of ideas for Trek audio series.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've got about half a dozen. So it would be great to have something similar to Big Finish, but I have no idea what the right situation is or how that would get off the ground. And
Yeah,
Big Finish are tooled up to do it. It's a shame, really, in a way that they can't get the license or who knows? Again, who knows what's going on?
yeah. I mean, to go back to our touchstone here, like it's a
Mm,
weird time for the publishing industry. Doubly
mm,
so for Trek because uh didn't they did let me try to use my words here. The I believe CBS was trying to sell off Simon and Schuster because they wanted to get
mm,
out of the publishing game completely. So
mm,
depending on how those licenses work out, because once they're no
mm.
longer a subsidiary of the same corporate conglomerate, uh, I'm sure they're going to want to branch those licenses out more to than just the two or three that they
Mm,
have right now, because they've got Titan and then they have CBS or
mm.
Simon and Schuster, and then IDW and Modiphius. So there's four I think that are doing both.
Yeah, yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, these things sort of, I assume that at some point Simon is just I assume that they weren't part of the same company at one point, and then then they were, and then they won't be again. So all these things are. I'm fairly sure that I honestly don't know. I could easily believe that BBC Books are no longer part of the BBC, for example. Aren't they owned by Penguin Random House now? I think the BBC moved out of books, but it's BBC Books because they're connected to BBC programming. Yeah, so these things survive corporate mergers or corporate, restructuring. If there's a viable franchise there, somebody will take it and run with it.
Yep, if
And as
there's
I
money to be
say,
made.
if there's money to be made. And I just wish we could get some audio up and running because it's such a, the Doctor Who stuff is great. And I think Star Trek. I think the difficulty is we've got much more of a culture of listening to radio drama in Britain. You've got this kind of national, obviously you've got BBC Radio, and there's a lot of drama production, and continues to be a lot of drama production. And I'm not sure there's quite the same uh, culture within the States. And obviously, you don't have something equivalent to the BBC that's producing all this stuff and producing it on a kind of national level. So I think people were. I know when we were sort of bouncing this idea around, we found it easier to talk about producing a podcast than producing an audio drama. Yeah, that was a
Hmm.
thing that people could go, oh, I can see what this might be, a kind of drama podcast. Okay, all right. I just call it a radio play, loves. It's very, very 1920s of me, but
As
but
a kid, my parents liked giving me Green Hornet tapes, so I listened
mm,
to a whole bunch of Green Hornet radio serials uh,
yeah.
on cassette tape, and I
Mm,
think that like if you just like change the word, like you said, like it's not a serial anymore, it's a podcast. Like everyone
yeah,
understands that concept, and there's the
yeah,
infrastructure for it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Things like I guess Night Vale were sort of groundbreaking here and kind of showing that that's a thing that you can do. But it's culturally, it's something that I think British people just happen to understand extremely well because we've
Hmm.
all got Radio 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, are these all like full production audio events, or is it just like one or two people with a well-versed Foley artist?
What the Big Finish
Yeah,
audios?
yeah. I haven't
Oh,
listened to any of those.
oh wow, okay. Well, they do. So they have what used to be called the main range, and I mean, Big Finish has just celebrated 25 years. Yeah, it really was the place when Doctor Who was off air. It was where you went to get kind of monthly or every 2 months fix of Doctor Who. So from very early on, they were producing hour-long dramas that starred the Doctors. They had like Colin Baker, Peter Davison, particularly the Eighth Doctor, who only had one on-screen adventure. There's a whole, hours and hours and tens of hours of audio drama, and then from that they span out into those are full cast audios. They've got a variety of formats, which might be dramatized narrations or a very short play. And then they've gone into other beyond Doctor Who. They've done audio dramas for other TV shows that British people know well. So things like Blake Seven or Star Cops. And I think they now have they do occasional sort of original plays as well. So I mean, there's just an unbelievable ton of stuff. So if you're at all interested in Doctor Who, and you've not got enough to be doing, then have a look at the Big Finish website because yeah, I mean, 25 years worth of drama. And what was interesting was that a lot of people who had been uh, there was novels at the time as well after Doctor Who went off air. People who were working on the Big Finish audios and in the novels, people like Rob Shearman, who then went on to write for the show. People like Paul
Hmm.
Cornell. They're sort of these are sort of early places where they did a little bit of Doctor Who, and then they were in place. Oh, they had Rob Shearman's a playwright and a short story writer. Paul Cornell's a comics writer, but then they were kind of in a place to be able to write for the show when it came back. So it's where Doctor Who was when it was off air. So it seems to be like, eventually they'll run out of TV Star Trek to make. It just seems a good place to be able to do more adventures. Of course, with audio, you can be ambitious in different ways because you're not,
Hmm.
you can do all kinds of strangely experimental things that perhaps you couldn't do on screen. It's a great format.
Yeah, some of
Mm.
the greatest Q content that I've like the long form stuff is the audio stuff that
Mm.
John Delancey and Leonard Nimoy
Yep.
did, which was I think it was just called Spock vs. Q, and
Mm.
it's uh, not a whole lot of action, just a whole lot of
Hmm.
philosophical talking about like what reality is and who controls what, and is
Yeah.
humanity
Yeah.
worth
Yeah.
it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it really is a shame that we don't have more of that. I know
Yeah.
they did just try one with it was Star Trek Picard No Man's Land.
That's wonderful,
Um,
isn't it? It's Kirsten Beyer is one of the authors, isn't she? Yeah. So I don't know if they were testing the ground with that, but and the thing with audio is that you can go quite philosophical and make it a talky thing, or you can you do huge special effects because you're not having to put it on screen.
right.
You're
Yeah.
just going to have to suggest it. I think it has because it has a soundscape. You can get quite, I can imagine doing the sort of wormhole aliens as a soundscape. That would be
Hmm.
amazing. And so many of the actors in Star Trek are so theatrically trained that
Hmm.
I think it would be wonderful to be able to have their voices. And with Blake Seven, I know as the cast got older, and they were starting to, they were old people. It didn't matter on audio; it was still the same voice. You could still have them as the sort of people that they were in the show. So there's a lot of benefits to it. That's funny we've gotten to audio.
Yeah, it is always shocking how time moves on, especially
Mm,
with something that's on TV because
mm,
Patrick Stewart's a good example where like you
mm,
can turn on 16 different TV show or channels and see him
mm.
as he was 40 years ago.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you turn on the most recent Picard series, you're like, oh wow, I guess time does keep moving forward.
Time really
And
does. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you have these Hollywood reunions where you're like, oh, this is some
Mm,
Hollywood magic to make them look this nice because then you see them like doing the publicity and the interviews and everything that everyone's doing, and they look just like a normal person, just like
mm,
40 years later. Um,
yeah.
and I was just on a political call to action call with Linda Carter, and
Mm,
I want to say I just saw her in like at the end of a Wonder Woman film, and everyone's like, "Oh,
mm,
she still looks the same," blah blah blah. And then like on this call, which was much less Hollywood, much more like grassroots kind of stuff,
mm,
she looks like a lady of her age, like it,
mm.
exactly how I would expect, my mom or
Yeah.
aunts to look or
Yep.
sound. And there's people that don't get that. They're like, "Wow,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
sounds like she doesn't sound at all like what she was in that movie. I'm like, well,
Mm,
Hollywood's able to do a lot of stuff to make
yeah.
people look the way they look.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And 80 is old. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Really is. Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think 52 is old now, but
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I just hit 44 a couple weeks ago, and
gosh, you're still
yeah,
a
yeah,
baby.
exactly, right. Like, and I look back at myself when I was in my 30s versus my 20s,
Yeah,
or it's always a moving goalpost. Like, what is old? It's what other
exactly.
people are. It's not what you are.
Exactly that. Exactly that. It's what my older siblings are.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yes. So, the Asylum book is coming out in a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think sort of 7th of November, maybe 2.5, 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, very soon. Start
Yeah.
of November. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Um,
very, very soon. What's coming out on the horizon for you after that?
oh goodness. Good question. So there are some things, but they haven't been announced yet, so
Right. Yeah.
I can't say anything about those.
Which ones are
But
you
there
safe
are
to talk about?
I'm not sure I am. I think everything's still under wraps. So there's stuff, but I can't tell you.
Okay.
Sorry
So
about
you got
that.
irons in. No, that's fine. That's actually a very common thing. I know I
Yeah,
was talking to Ryan North, who is doing
yeah,
Lower Decks comic books, that he was saying that he always keeps track of what other people are talking about, like in the companies he works for, because if the
yeah,
CEO is talking about it, then he's fine to talk about it. But I'm like,
yeah,
man,
exactly
that's
that.
it's hard to keep track of that kind of stuff, though. And
Yeah, yeah. If in doubt, I don't mention it. I know that when I did the first Picard book, which is the first of the spin-offs, so it's the prequel to the first season, it was so under wraps
mhm.
that I still feel bad talking about it. I still feel like I'm going to get a cease and desist or something. It was when it was being transmitted. I was watching. Going, should people be seeing this? It's quite ridiculous. So yeah, you just if in doubt, I just if it's published, I think it's probably fine.
You would think.
You would think.
People are super weird about spoilers sometimes, though, where you're like,
Mm.
guys, this is a 30-year-old movie. You're gonna find out about like Luke's father at one point in
Yeah,
without seeing the movie. Also,
yeah,
I've got
yeah.
bad news
It's
about King Kong.
yeah, really bad news about it.
Well, I think that I've held your attention for
My pleasure.
a considerable amount of time, and I do appreciate you speaking to me today.
No
I'm not
problem.
sure
I'm
how
glad we
late it
found a
is
time.
there. Yeah, absolutely.
It's 10 to 1. So I'm gonna go and have a swim.
Oh.
And then I'm gonna do a little bit more work this afternoon. Got some emails to answer. And then I shall assiduously not work on the projects I should be working on.
Spoken like a true author.
Absolute professional. Yeah, just gotta be really feeling that fear before I get productive. So
It's the
I know
adrenaline gives you the proper
it's
mindset.
it's the adrenaline and the need for payday. These are the things I find really focus the mind. But I love talking about this stuff, so I'm always happy to do podcasts and things. So no problem at all. Really nice to meet you and speak to you.
Absolutely. Have a lovely day.
And you take care. Enjoy the rest of the day. Cheerio.